All right, so believe it or not, this is not the video I wanted to be making today. Just know this is not our usual content. We will be back next week with an amazing documentary. Our next documentary I've been working on for a while, and I'm very excited for it. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, so stay tuned for that. But that being said, today we're doing something obviously a little bit different. You've seen the title. Today we're going to be talking about YouTube plagiarism, specifically how PC Gamer, the big magazine, copied one of my videos. This was brought to my attention on my old subreddit, which I don't really use anymore. Nobody really does. But a couple days ago, a guy made a post that was titled PC Gamer plagiarized one of Jibe's older League videos back in 2016 to make an article about why League players hate Teemo. A few people have been linking this to me, and I've at first kind of thought it was funny. You know, this happened a while ago back in 2016, but then it was also cross-posted to the main League of Legends subreddit, and I kind of feel like it would be irresponsible for me to not talk about this because there's a lot going on here. For starters, though, let's just talk about this example. The video in question was titled Why League Players Hate Teemo, which... this really the kind of investigative journalism you want to be doing, PC Gamer? Personally speaking, I don't really like this video. I mean, it's a pretty bad video. It's 4 minutes long, and I just made this at a period of time on YouTube when I was desperately trying to survive. But, I mean, it did get kind of popular. It has 1.1 million views right now. Basically, in the video, I just kind of go through the unique elements of Teemo's kit that make him an unusual champion and unusually frustrating for players to play against. Then, 11 months later, PC Gamer wrote an article that was also titled something like Why League Players Hate Teemo, and it is extremely similar to my video. This poster ran us through a couple of examples, which again are just kind of funny. Example 1, I say, but Teemo has garnered a special kind of hatred about him over the years, a hatred that has existed ever since League of Legends as a game came out. PC Gamer says Teemo has garnered a lot of hate since his original release in 2009. Just looking at that on its own doesn't actually sound too bad, does it? I mean, we're both talking about the same thing. There's bound to be similarities in our phrasing and whatnot, but let's look at a few more. Jibe, why does everyone and their grandmother hate this cute little rat thing? PC Gamer, but why does everyone and their grandmother hate this adorable little tyke? Jibe, there are two types of frustration in League of Legends. Firstly, frustration from something feeling like it takes no skill. Secondly, frustration from something that feels like it has no counterplay. PC Gamer, this frustration is often due to many players believing that Teemo takes no skill, mixed with the feeling that there is little to no counterplay. This example here might actually be my favorite. Jibe, so if a Singed or Cho'Gath or whoever decides this is dumb, I'm just letting Teemo harass me until I'm dead, let's go for a trade instead, and maybe we can outplay him like that, Teemo can just press W and walk away, dodging any skill shots you throw out at him. I'm talking about how melee champions oftentimes can get harassed by Teemo, and it's particularly frustrating because even if they try and go for an engage, which is the only alternative to letting him slowly harass you, then, you know, you can't really do anything because he's able to walk away with his W. PC Gamer writes, this gave Teemo free reign to outmaneuver his opponents, easily guiding champions like Singed or Cho'Gath. There are so many champions Teemo counters. You had to use the exact same two I did? Personally, I just think this is kind of hilarious. You know, this is the level of copying you do in high school when you're writing an essay on a subject and you're just copying the Wikipedia article but trying to rearrange the words so the teacher doesn't notice. Again, when I was first shown this, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal because this happened a full 4 years ago now. It's been a while, and I'm gonna give the writer here the benefit of the doubt. I hope this was just some dumb young intern who was desperate to make a deadline and who, you know, he needed to come up with something and he copied my video, which it's a really awful thing to do, but, you know, don't harass this guy. Hopefully he was just a dumb young kid. We all do stupid things when we're teenagers or young adults. However, that being said, this is still a really messed up thing to do. And it's something that I want to talk about today because this is not the only time I have seen potentially people maybe ripping off some of my videos. And this has actually happened somewhat frequently and even more recently than 2016. And it's something that's actually pretty important to talk about. One of my favorite YouTubers is a guy named H Bomber Guy who made a big video on YouTube plagiarism. where he kind of reiterates a very important sentiment that many YouTubers have, which is if we don't build attitudes towards calling this kind of thing out, then the situation is never going to change. So that's the theme of today's video. Let's take some time to talk about how big media oftentimes takes advantage of independent content creators. Now, I just want to start this off by saying, personally, I am not a guy that has much of a problem when it comes to YouTubers taking inspiration / copying each other. This is something that I have done all the time in the past. My Road to Diamond series, which might be one of the more famous series that I've done, one of the things I'm more known for in the League of Legends community when it comes to my content. That's something that I think I might have been the first League of Legends YouTuber to do that kind of series, but that was not an original idea at all. I just kind of stole it from the FIFA community, who did a Road to Glory series where they would take an ultimate team from the very start of the game and try and build that up to a team that could make it up to the, League 1, whatever the top league of competition was. That's a completely unoriginal idea that I stole from them. Shortly after that, I started making some daily gameplay commentaries, which that might be the most unoriginal idea that anybody has ever come up with on YouTube. Everybody does that sort of thing. Personally, I was spending a lot of time watching FaZe Jev. He's a fantastic YouTuber that I saw his videos. I liked watching them and thought, hey, I want to try and do this myself. Even the documentaries that I make nowadays still take quite a bit of inspiration from some of the other documentary YouTubers that I enjoy watching. People like John Boys. John Boys, in my opinion, is the best creator on YouTube right now. People like Summoning Salt. He makes these fantastic in-depth speedrun documentaries on the history of various different world records, and he does a fantastic job of making super high-quality content. Even Nick Robinson and his shtick of always flying to Japan for silly things, I specifically quoted him and kind of borrowed his phrase when I made my video flying to Korea to try and learn how to play Aurelia. I guess the point I'm getting at here is that at the end of the day, I am completely understanding of YouTubers who might want to copy each other for the sake of trying to find their own style of content they can make. If you want to look up to the people that you enjoy watching and the really high quality creators on YouTube and try and want to borrow their style or borrow their series or their structure to set up a framework for you to create your own content and hopefully be able to find your own voice in the future through doing so, that is something that I am very understanding of. It is still a bit of a dick move. I acknowledge that, but at the end of the day, you can't copyright artistic ideas. I can't copyright the idea of making League of Legends documentaries, and as long as that's the case, other people are always going to be able to rip off my own League of Legends documentaries, and that's fine. That's kind of how the world should be. At the end of the day, if somebody else is able to maybe nick my style and use that to find their own voice, I'm okay with it. And if at the end of the day, if somebody is really kind of blatantly ripping off another YouTuber and their style, then most of the time they don't find success anyway. People recognize that, and they don't really get to grow at all until they find their own style. But this PC gamer thing has kind of reminded me that oftentimes you see big media outlets doing the same thing. And when a big media outlet is copying or mimicking an independent creator, they aren't doing that for the sake of finding their own voice. Big magazines or companies, they don't need to find their own voice to find success on YouTube. They are not copying independent creators for that. They are copying independent creators for their content. And that is something that's a little bit scummier and something that I actually do have a much bigger problem with. Currently, my most viewed video on my YouTube channel is my Moscow 5 documentary, where I go through the history of M5 and talk about how they were able to innovate in League of Legends and create a playstyle that was so revolutionary every pro team still uses it today. And it blew up on YouTube. It's currently my most viewed video, sitting at 3 million views. 6 months after my video came out, a YouTube channel named The Score Esports, which is a very big media outlet that talks about a number of different things. Esports, they also do traditional sports and stuff like that. But The Score Esports YouTube channel made their own video detailing the history of Moscow 5. Now, that's fair. They might have just had an independent urge to talk about the history of Moscow 5 shortly after my video started blowing up on YouTube. But it was something that made me a little bit suspicious. They do kind of go through the story in the same way that I do, hitting on the same story beats and structuring it in the same way, doing things like, in my video, I opened by talking about how in early League of Legends, there was no LCS, there was no structure that we have today. It was only a loosely run tournament circuit, and they kind of opened their video talking about the exact same thing. Now, at the end of the day, that's kind of fine. Again, I mean, if two people are doing a biography or documentary on the same subject, there are bound to be plenty of similarities as they're telling the same story, but it gets kind of suspicious. I mean, if you've watched that video yourself, you probably know that everything they talk about in their video, I also talk about in mine. The only things that they talk about that are not in my video are things that they got kind of blatantly wrong. For example, they talk about M5 and say that they were a special or unusual team because they were aggressive, and that's what made them so good in early League of Legends. But that is not true at all. They were not geniuses for having the idea to be more aggressive than other teams. They were geniuses for inventing the idea of lane priority and jungle priority. I go into a big thing in my own video talking about that and how that allowed them to be more aggressive than other teams, and how this is a mechanic that people still use today. It was such a revolutionary idea, but the score didn't really, I think they just don't really know what it was that made Moscow 5 good. They also say in their video that innovation happens in every single meta, but what made Moscow 5 different was the fact that they were able to do it without the resources that we have today, where today we have teams and stats and, big organizations with coaches and analysts and stuff that Moscow 5 wasn't privy to, as they were just independent players or, something along those lines. And that's not true at all either. Again, the thing that made Moscow 5 good was they created an idea that is used even today. It's like someone creating the idea of split pushing. That's not something that's just a flavor of a meta that's innovative. No, that is a strategy that will forever exist in League of Legends. Now, to their credit, in the comments of their video on Moscow 5, somebody had mentioned that I made my own documentary on Moscow 5, and they hearted it for what that's worth. Doesn't really help me pay my bills, but okay, whatever. They did kind of try and show an attempt that they were aware that I had made a big video myself. But this is still something that, it doesn't really sit right with me. It certainly is possible that they just had an independent urge, as I said, to make a Moscow 5 video the same way I had an independent urge to make a Moscow 5 video. And maybe they had never seen my video, but it's something that bothers me. Like, whoever wrote the script on their video had no idea anything about Moscow 5. They did not know what it was that made Moscow 5 special. I'm ashamed of the idea that they could have ripped off my own video, because if they did, then I clearly didn't do a good enough job explaining what it was that made Moscow 5 good, because if I was their source, then I didn't teach them at all. But, that's just a theory. Maybe they did do their own independent research that, didn't involve my own video. Who knows? Who can say? We can only speculate. And if this was the only time the score had done something like this, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But sadly, this has happened again somewhat recently. In the past couple of months, I discovered another YouTuber named Slush, who does similar sort of documentary style videos, somewhat similar to my own, where he makes a lot of videos talking about big personalities and detailing the history of them. People like Dr. Disrespect, people like Ninja. I personally found him because he made a big documentary on my favorite streamer of all time, Wreckful. But of all the videos he's made, the most popular one by far is a video on Summit 1G, where basically in his video he talks about the history of Summit, and specifically a moment in Summit's career when he was playing Fortnite and a bunch of popular games for the sake of trying to be popular and make it on Twitch, but how that was really frustrating him and depressing him because he wasn't enjoying the game. So then he took a break from streaming, came back, only played games he liked, and then became maybe even more popular than he was before he left. And he made that video, it blew up, got very successful. Then, about 11 months later, The Score made a video talking about the exact same thing and kind of structuring it in the same way, where this time it seemed like it was maybe mimicking Slush's video to a point where people recognized it in the comments. Some people were confused. They thought it was like a re-upload, whereas others called them out and specifically said, hey, they're just kind of copying Slush's video. This is a ripoff of that video. And I mean, this time it was so kind of lazy and blatant that they ended up getting a bit of backlash in terms of, bigger dislikes and stuff. And then Slush himself tried to make a video that responded to it and talked about how they had seemingly ripped off his most popular video, but he didn't really end up getting that much attention or that much traction for his own frustrations. What's kind of hilarious about this, though, and something that even Slush missed, I think, is that when the Score made their video on Summit, they had already done a Summit documentary. They had a separate video that they had released prior called The Story of Summit, which, I mean, this kind of suggests, again, we're just kind of getting into alleged speculation. We're just speculating about this kind of stuff. But I feel like what I believe probably happened was the Score, they saw that Summit was getting popular again recently because he was streaming Valorant. And they wanted to make a video that capitalized on his popularity, that would get a lot of attention because they're making a video on a popular streamer that's very relevant currently. And they wanted to make a video on him, but they couldn't talk about the entire history of his career because they had already done that in another video. So they thought, hey, we need to create a new video for Summit. We have to find a new framework. And so what did they do? They thought, hey, here's another video that's laying around that's talking about some stuff that we kind of missed in our own first documentary. Let's maybe borrow those ideas. I mean, again, I gotta really iterate that this is just speculation. We have no idea what they ended up doing, but I don't know if you guys have seen this. Maybe they've been doing this with other content creators that I'm not aware of. I don't know. Maybe they'll come out with a big Ocelot documentary talking about the history of G2 Zoners sometime soon. Who knows, right? We can only really speculate because we aren't the ones that work there. We aren't the ones that make these videos ourselves, but this is something that does rub me the wrong way. Even if it's a coincidence, which maybe it is, it's something that just doesn't entirely sit right with me for a couple of reasons. The first and foremost thing that I hate so much about it, though, is it kills the story. The thing that I hate about their Moscow 5 video, even more than the fact that it might have been a potential ripoff of my own video, I hate how bad their video is. Their video is terrible. It doesn't understand at all what it was that made Moscow 5 great. They do a horrible job of explaining it. It is awful, and it completely kills the story of Moscow 5. The reason I make documentaries on League of Legends history is because there were a lot of crazy things that happened specifically between Season 1 and Season 3 of League of Legends that a lot of you guys weren't around to experience, that a lot of people aren't aware of, even people back then who might have been playing the game weren't watching these tournaments and don't know about these stories. So what I try and do is let you feel the emotion. I try and craft the story in a big, highly edited documentary that, I can't take you back in time so you can experience it yourself, but I can try and put music and visuals and things together that can let you experience the emotion of these crazy stories the same way the people who were following it at the time did. But when the Score makes a video, they are just reporting on it like it's the news from yesterday. They do nothing to try and make you feel the emotion that the story deserves. I mean, these channels and media outlets are so successful, they don't need to be ripping off of independent creators. They can do fine on their own. They have millions of subscribers and get tens of millions of views in the time it takes for someone like me to make a single documentary. Why are they trying to, get these ideas from other YouTubers and just retell these stories, maybe repackaging it as their own? I mean, maybe they aren't doing that. This is all hypothesis and speculation, but if that is what they're doing, why on earth are they doing it? Why don't they hire independent YouTubers? That's something that really bothers me. Not saying I would necessarily want to work at the Score, but this is something you see all the time with other good companies. John Boyes is the creative director at SB Nation. Yahtzee Croshaw was almost immediately hired by The Escapist when he started making Zero Punctuation. I mean, there's a lot of circumstances where it just makes sense for companies to work with independent creators. Even Afrika, when Afrika saw my videos, my documentaries that I was making on other teams, they didn't say, hey, let's go hire a Korean YouTuber to make our own documentary. If they were to do that, nobody would think they were ripping off of my videos. Every team in League of Legends has a right to make a documentary on themselves. But no, they liked my videos, so they reached out to me and asked me if I could work with them to make a documentary for them and get it translated into Korean as well as have it out in English. There are good companies out there that know how to take advantage of, or not take advantage, but how to work with independent content creators rather than take advantage of them. why don't these other why are they making these, why are they telling these stories so badly on their own? I don't know. This is just something that's frustrating me. Obviously, I'm sure you guys can tell I'm getting a little bit hot over it. It's frustrating, and I don't understand it. It does a disservice to the content itself. You know, at the end of the day, that's the worst part about plagiarism, in my opinion. I mean, anytime plagiarism occurs, what happens is someone will see another person's thing. They'll say, okay, I want to take those ideas and repackage it as my own. I think that's the definition of plagiarism. But when they do that repackaging, they oftentimes completely distort the story itself, or they distort the content itself. And the content is lowered. It is not as good as it was in its original form. And it does a disservice to the art itself. That's the worst part about all of this. And I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I'm just speculating here. Maybe The Score is a perfectly fine company who is not ripping off of independent creators. But I mean, if they are, it is incredibly frustrating that this happens. That this has been apparently happening to me, unbeknownst to me, with circumstances like PC Gamer writing their own articles that are kind of plagiarizing my own videos, and to see that it's still, it might still be happening today. I assume it is. That's something that's incredibly frustrating. And I guess at the end of the day, the only thing that I can suggest that you do is please make sure you support independent creators. Be careful about supporting big media outlets, and make sure that they aren't taking advantage of other creators or even their own employees in some sort of way. I mean, make sure that you're supporting companies that are behaving ethically when it comes to their business practices. That's an important thing to do. But also just support independent creators. I mean, they're already dying on YouTube, man. YouTube's already trying to push them out for traditional media. Just try and support them. That's the only advice I can give. I mean, I got a Patreon. I got a Teespring. Hint, hint, plug, plug. Anyway, though, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed listening. Thanks, if you're listening to me now, for sticking with me until the end of this big video, this little rant. I got a new documentary that will be coming out next week. It's a really big one. Really excited for you to see it, as well as some other projects that I got right up there on my ideas board that I think you guys are going to like it, so subscribe for more. But I'll see you guys next time. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day.